More than 2,000 years ago, China was divided into 7 powerful kingdoms. Their armies fought for land, wealth, and survival. Cities burned, families were separated. Generations grew up knowing only war. Then one man changed everything. His name was Ying Zheng. He defeated every rival kingdom and created the first unified Chinese empire. He built roads, changed laws, standardized writing, and commanded millions of people. Later, the world would know him as Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. He had more power than any Chinese ruler before him. Yet in his final years, he became deeply afraid of one enemy: death. The man who conquered China began searching for a medicine that could make him live forever. But that search may have destroyed him. Take a slow breath, my friend, and travel back more than 2,000 years to a land divided by fear and war. 7 kingdoms fought for power, and no family could feel completely safe. In the city of Handan, capital of the enemy state of Zhao, a young boy lived far from the homeland of his family. His name was Ying Zheng. He was not born inside a peaceful royal palace. His father was a prince of Qin, who had been sent to Zhao as a political hostage. A person kept there to make sure Qin followed an agreement. This meant the young family lived among people who saw Qin as an enemy. Here is one detail many people may never have heard before. The future emperor of China spent his earliest years inside a kingdom that Qin would later destroy. Perhaps those dangerous years taught him something early. Safety could disappear quickly, promises could be broken, and the people smiling beside you today might become your enemies tomorrow. When war broke out again between Qin and Zhao, Ying Zheng and his mother were forced to hide. The people around them saw Qin as an enemy, and the young boy learned that even his family name could place him in danger. No one knows exactly how much he understood, but those early years may have left a deep mark on him. He grew up knowing that promises could be broken, protection could disappear, and trust had to be given carefully. Soon, the frightened child of Handan would return to Qin and inherit a throne. In 247 BCE, Ying Zheng became king of Qin. He was only 13 years old. He wore royal robes and sat beneath the symbols of power, but he was still a child. The real decisions were made by older men around him, especially the powerful minister, Lu Buwei. Court officials controlled the government, while the young king watched, listened, and waited. The palace was not a safe place. Behind polite smiles were secret alliances, private ambitions, and quiet struggles for control. Even members of his own family became part of dangerous political plans. Ying Zheng learned that a crown did not always mean freedom. He was king, but he could not yet fully rule. For years, he studied the people around him. He learned who was loyal, who was ambitious, and who might become a threat. When the right moment came, the silent boy on the throne would begin taking power for himself. As Ying Zheng grew older, the danger around him became impossible to ignore. A powerful man named Lao Ai gathered supporters and planned a rebellion against the young king. The revolt failed. Ying Zheng responded with shocking force. Lao Ai was executed, his followers were punished, and the king's own mother was removed from political life. Soon after, Liu Bui also lost his power. The young ruler had learned a painful lesson. Threats did not always come from enemy kingdoms. Sometimes they came from inside the palace, from people close enough to share your table. After this, Ying Zheng became harder and more suspicious. He trusted fewer people and began taking full control of Qin for himself. Qin was not the oldest or richest kingdom in ancient China, but it had become the most organized and disciplined. Across its fields, farmers worked under careful government plans. Officials counted crops, families, and land. Roads helped soldiers move quickly. In military camps, men trained under strict rules, knowing that success could bring rewards and failure could bring severe punishment. Much of Qin's strength came from legalism, a system that used strict laws and punishments to control society. Its leaders believed people could not be guided by kindness alone. They needed clear rules, strong rewards, and consequences they feared. This system made Qin powerful. Every farmer, official, and soldier became part of one great machine. But a machine built for victory could also be cruel. Qin was preparing to end centuries of war, yet the peace it promised would come at a terrible human cost. Qin was now stronger than any other kingdom. Its soldiers were disciplined, its laws were strict, and its leaders were ready to expand. But Ying Zheng wanted more than victory. He wanted to end the age of divided kingdoms forever. But before the great wars begin, remember one strange detail. Near the end of this story, we will discover why the death of the most powerful man in China had to be hidden during a long journey home. For days, an entire royal group continued moving across the empire while protecting a secret that could have caused rebellion. What happened inside that closed carriage is one of the strangest details of Qin Shi Huang's final journey. But first, we must see how Ying Zheng became powerful enough to unite China. For hundreds of years, the kingdoms of China had fought one another. Borders changed, cities were destroyed, soldiers marched away, and many never returned home. Most kings dreamed of defeating a rival or gaining more land. Ying Zheng wanted something far greater. He wanted to remove every rival king and bring the entire land under one ruler. To him, unification meant the end of endless war. No more 7 kingdoms. No more changing alliances. No more separate armies fighting for power. But peace would not come gently. Ying Zheng prepared Qin for a series of great campaigns. His generals studied roads, rivers, walls, and enemy weaknesses. His soldiers moved with speed and discipline. He was not simply trying to win battles. He was trying to destroy the old world and replace it with a new one. One law, one government, and one emperor above all. The wars began with speed and careful planning. In 230 BCE, Qin defeated Han, the smallest of the rival kingdoms. Then another kingdom fell, and then another. Zhao, where Ying Zheng had spent his dangerous childhood, was conquered. Wei's capital was flooded after Qin soldiers redirected a river. Yan, the kingdom that had once sent an assassin against Ying Zheng, also fell. Then Qin's armies moved toward Qi, the last kingdom still standing. Across China, old borders disappeared. Royal families lost their power. Soldiers who had defended their kingdoms for generations were defeated or forced to surrender. By 221 BCE, the final kingdom, Qi, gave up without a major battle. For the first time, all of China stood under one ruler. Ying Zheng had destroyed the old world of 7 kingdoms. In 221 BCE, Ying Zheng stood above a land that had been divided for centuries. The old kingdoms were gone. Their kings had fallen, and their armies had been defeated. But Ying Zheng did not want to be called simply a king. That title belonged to the rulers of the old world. He created a new name for himself, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of Qin. The title showed how he saw his place in history. He was not continuing the past. He believed he was beginning a completely new age. His empire would be ruled by one government, one system, and one supreme leader. He imagined that his family would rule for thousands of generations. For the first time, China had an emperor. If this story is helping you understand English more naturally, please subscribe and continue this journey with us. Because Qin Shi Huang had united the land, but now he had to control it. Qin Shi Huang did not only unite China's land. He wanted its people to live under the same systems. Across the empire, he created common systems for writing, money, weights, and measurements. A merchant could now use the same coins in distant regions. Officials could read the same written characters far from home. Carts were built with similar axle widths, making travel easier on the new roads. These changes helped trade, communication, and government move more smoothly. But they also strengthened the emperor's control. Local customs and old systems slowly disappeared as one central authority reached into daily life. Qin Shi Huang had conquered the kingdoms with armies. Now he was uniting them through rules, roads, and shared standards. To protect his new empire, Qin Shi Huang ordered old defensive walls in the north to be connected and extended. These walls were built to slow attacks from nomadic groups beyond the border. Today, many people call this the beginning of the Great Wall of China. But the wall we see now was mostly built much later. Qin Shi Huang's walls were often made from packed earth, wood, and local stone. The work was enormous. Soldiers, prisoners, and ordinary laborers were sent far from home. They carried heavy materials across mountains, deserts, and cold northern land. Many suffered from hunger, exhaustion, and disease. Some never returned. To the emperor, the walls meant safety and control. To the workers who built them, they often meant pain, separation, and death. The empire was becoming stronger, but its strength was being built on human suffering. While Qin Shi Huang built an empire above the ground, he was also creating another one beneath it. Work on his enormous tomb began when he was still young. Thousands of workers shaped an underground world with soldiers, horses, chariots, and weapons. Today, we call them the Terracotta Army. Each clay soldier has a different face. Some look young, others look tired, serious, or proud. Together, they form a silent army waiting in the darkness. Above the earth, Qin Shi Huang ruled living soldiers. Below it, another army stood ready to protect him after death. The tomb showed both his power and his fear. He wanted his control to continue even in the world beyond life. As Qin Shi Huang's empire grew stronger, life became harder for many ordinary people. Heavy taxes paid for roads, walls, palaces, and the emperor's enormous tomb. Farmers were taken from their fields and forced to work far from home. Soldiers and prisoners labored under dangerous conditions, often with little food or rest. The law was strict, and punishment could be severe. A small crime might bring a heavy sentence. Families could also suffer for the actions of one person. The emperor believed fear would create order. In some ways, it did. Officials obeyed. Armies moved quickly. Great projects rose across the land. But fear also created anger. China was becoming more united, yet it was not becoming more gentle. Beneath the empire's strength, quiet suffering was growing, and one day, that suffering would help tear the Qin dynasty apart. Qin Shi Huang wanted more than control over land and armies. He also wanted control over ideas. He ordered many books connected to older kingdoms and political thought to be destroyed. Texts about farming, medicine, and practical skills were often protected, but writings that could challenge his rule were dangerous. Some scholars who opposed the government were punished severely. Later histories claim that many were executed, though the exact details remain debated. The emperor feared that people would use the past to criticize the present. It was not enough for him to control roads, laws, and soldiers. He also wanted to control memory itself, what people could read, what they could teach, and how they understood history. Even after uniting China, Qin Shi Huang never felt completely safe. Several people tried to kill him, but the most famous attempt came from a man named Jing Ke. Jing Ke entered the palace, pretending to bring a map and a valuable gift from the kingdom of Yan. Hidden inside the rolled map was a sharp dagger. When the map opened, Jing Ke suddenly attacked. The emperor stepped back in shock. His sword was long and difficult to pull free, so he ran around a palace column while guards watched helplessly. Palace rules did not allow them to carry weapons close to him. At last, Qin Shi Huang drew his sword and survived. The attack failed, but it may have deepened the fear already growing inside him. After surviving this and other assassination attempts, Qin Shi Huang became more secretive. He trusted fewer people, hid his movements, and lived with the knowledge that death could reach him even inside his own palace. That fear soon began to shape the final years of his life. He had defeated kings, armies, and entire kingdoms, but now he faced an enemy no soldier could fight. He began searching for immortality, the ability to live forever. He invited healers, magicians, and explorers to his court. Some promised that special medicines could protect him from death. Others spoke of distant islands where immortal people lived. The emperor sent ships across the eastern sea to find these mysterious places. He traveled through his empire, visiting sacred mountains and searching for signs from the spirit world. But the more power Qin Shi Huang gained, the more frightened he became. He controlled millions of lives, yet he could not control the length of his own. Among the medicines Qin Shi Huang received were small pills that promised eternal life. Some of them may have contained mercury, a shining liquid metal that ancient healers believed had mysterious power. The emperor may not have known that mercury was poisonous. Instead of protecting his body, it could slowly damage his organs, disturb his mind, and make him weaker. This created a tragic irony. Qin Shi Huang searched for a way to escape death, but the medicine he trusted may have brought death closer. As the years passed, he became more restless and suspicious. He continued traveling, consulting healers, and looking for signs of immortality. He had built walls against enemies and armies against rebellion. But no wall could protect him from time, and no soldier could stand between him and the natural end of life. In 210 BCE, Qin Shi Huang began another journey through the eastern part of his empire. He wanted to inspect the roads, visit important places, and show that the first emperor was still in control. But his health was failing. Inside the royal carriage, he became weaker each day. Officials around him spoke carefully. Few dared to mention death, because the emperor hated the subject and punished those who spoke about it too openly. The roads continued beneath the wheels. Villages passed. Mountains appeared and disappeared in the distance. Qin Shi Huang had spent his life building an empire that obeyed his commands. Yet on this final journey, his own body no longer listened to him. Far from the capital, the ruler of China was approaching the end he had feared for so long. Earlier, I promised to tell you about the strange secret hidden inside Qin Shi Huang's final journey. In 210 BCE, the first emperor died far from the capital. But the officials traveling with him were terrified. If the army and the public learned the truth, rebellion might begin before they returned home. So they hid his death. Meals were still carried to the closed carriage. Officials continued to bring reports and speak through the curtains, pretending the emperor was alive. But as the journey continued, a terrible smell began to spread from inside. To hide it, the officials placed carts filled with rotting fish near the royal carriage. The most powerful man in China returned home in silence, hidden behind curtains, while everyone around him acted as if he were still giving orders. After Qin Shi Huang's death, a dangerous struggle for power began. The emperor's eldest son, Fusu, was expected to become the next ruler. But two powerful officials, Li Si and Zhao Gao, feared losing their influence. They hid the emperor's final orders and created a false message in his name. The message commanded Fusu to take his own life. Then they placed Qin Shi Huang's younger son, Hu Hai, on the throne. He became the second emperor, but he was weak and easy to control. Qin Shi Huang had built an empire around one powerful man. Now that man was gone, and the people around his throne began tearing the empire apart from within. The new emperor, Hu Hai, could not control the empire his father had created. Taxes remained heavy. Forced labor continued. Punishments grew even harsher. Across China, anger finally broke into open rebellion. Farmers left their fields. Soldiers turned against the government. Local leaders raised armies, and old enemies of Qin returned. The empire that had once moved like one powerful machine began to break apart. Zhao Gao controlled the young emperor through fear and lies. Officials were punished. Generals were distrusted, and the court became filled with suspicion. Qin Shi Huang had dreamed that his family would rule for thousands of generations. But only a few years after his death, the Qin dynasty collapsed. He had built a system strong enough to conquer China, but too cruel and fragile to survive without him. Qin Shi Huang left behind a divided legacy. He ended centuries of war and created the first unified Chinese empire. He standardized writing, money, measurements, and roads. Many of the systems he introduced helped later dynasties govern China for centuries. But his achievements came at a terrible price. Heavy taxes, forced labor, strict laws, and fear caused deep suffering. His dynasty collapsed soon after his death. Qin Shi Huang built a system strong enough to unite China, but too harsh to protect his own family's rule. He was both a great builder and a feared ruler, a man who changed history forever, yet could never escape the consequences of the power he created. More than 2,000 years have passed since Qin Shi Huang died. His palaces disappeared, his dynasty collapsed, and the great empire he created changed many times. But beneath the earth, his silent army remained. Thousands of terracotta soldiers, figures made from baked clay, still stand in long lines near his unopened tomb. There are archers, generals, horses, and chariots. Each face seems different, as if real soldiers were quietly waiting in the darkness. They were created to protect the emperor after death. Yet the man they guarded never returned. Above the ground, Qin Shi Huang's empire survived for only a few years after him. Below the ground, his army waited for more than 2,000 years. Perhaps this is his most powerful image. A ruler who searched for eternal life, surrounded in death by soldiers who could never save him. Qin Shi Huang's story leaves us with a quiet lesson about power. He controlled armies, laws, roads, and millions of people. He tried to remove every threat and bring the whole empire under one system. But the more control he gained, the more afraid he became. Power could defeat his enemies, but it could not give him peace. Strict laws could force people to obey, but they could not create true loyalty. Great walls could protect borders, but they could not stop time. Qin Shi Huang changed history forever. Yet his life reminds us that control has limits. A person may rule a kingdom, shape a nation, and command the world around him. But no one can escape being human. Remember the silent carriage that carried Qin Shi Huang home. The officials around him could hide his death for a few days, but they could not hide the truth forever. The man who had commanded millions was still human, and no order could bring him back. Qin Shi Huang never found the medicine of eternal life. His body could not escape death. But perhaps he became immortal in another way. More than 2,000 years later, his silent soldiers still stand beneath the earth. The empire he created shaped the future of China, and people around the world still speak his name. He did not live forever as a man. He lived forever in history. And so, my friend, our journey through the life of Qin Shi Huang comes to an end. He began as a young king surrounded by danger. He united a divided land and created an empire that changed the future of China. But his story also reminds us that power has limits. A ruler may command armies, build walls, and control millions of lives, but no one can command time. Thank you for traveling through history with me today. Before you go, tell me in the comments, what country are you listening from, and which historical person would you like to hear about in our next story? I always enjoy reading your answers. Until next time, take care of yourself. Keep listening and never stop learning.